Hello again, welcome to Lessons from the Table. Got a bit of an interesting one this week. This is something that is drawn very directly from my own campaign. This is also something I've talked about at some length on Reddit. If you are interested in checking out those threads, then I will be linking those in the doobly-doo. And this is a crucial component, in my opinion, of running a quote-unquote evil campaign. And this relates to the players. It is the concept of there is no such thing as a problem character. There is only problem players. What I mean by this, there are a lot of DMs who, let's put it simply, judge a book by its cover. And I think we all do this to an extent. When we see, the tiefling that never knew their parents and is a bit of an outcast and a loner and has a wolf as a pet, a lot of us, our eyes start to roll and we're like, oh yeah, and I bet you're never going to camp with the party. You're always going to bugger off and do your own thing at night. And there's a lot of information out there on how to deal with that sort of player. Now, I make a very big distinction there because that is not a character thing. The character is not going off in the middle of the night and having some side adventure that the DM is forced to facilitate. To the point where suddenly the other players are having a shit time and the DM has to sit down with that person and go, okay, you've got to stop doing this, or quote-unquote punishing them in-game by having nothing happen during the night, but while they were out, the rest of the party got ambushed and had a great combat. You should have been there. This is about the character itself. I think a lot of DMs are adverse to characters that would have evil leanings. But I don't think it's just DMs. I think it's also other players. So I'm currently running what I would describe as an evil campaign. Not insofar as all my player characters are dicks and want to take over the world. It's more a moral grayness. They are willing to murder, cheat, steal, lie, whatever, if it suits their means, if it suits their ends. And they do. They absolutely have. Just a couple of sessions ago, they smothered a teenage elven girl to death so that she wouldn't grow up to be a hag, and told the parents that she had died elsewhere, having been previously captured by the hag. Just, oh, yeah, sorry, she was dead when we found her, nothing we could do. They were the ones, they had her alive, brought her all the way back to the village, then found out she had turned into a hag, smothered her to death with a pillow. That is something my player characters are completely willing to do. I know that is very extreme. Now, here's the thing. First of all, everyone at my table had to be okay with that. That is a discussion I had at the outset of the campaign, seeing what all these characters were on paper and going, okay, everyone, what is our limit? Now, luckily, these are players I'd played with before, which meant I knew for the most part what their limits were, what was off limits to them, and they're pretty willing to go to certain extremes, right? I think there are lines that it's good to try and not cross in general, but be clear with your players. Know what is and is not okay. What level of violence is fine for them? Is torture okay? If you're having a night with a prostitute, what's the limit of vividness you're willing to go to? And I say that very seriously. Some tables, everyone is playing their favorite game when there is a high level of vividity. And it's not for us to judge that. If you're the only player at your table that likes that level of vividity, and no one else does, well, you're not really getting that. Also, by the way, make sure that you're after that for the right reasons. But that's enough said of that. Make sure everyone's on the same page. How violent can we be? How willing are we to cheat, steal, murder, commit arson, what have you? And yes, arson has happened in my campaign too. So here's the important thing beyond that. Once you've got all your players on the same page with that, I think there is a way one must address the social contract at the table. One of my least favorite experiences I ever had playing Dungeons & Dragons, I was playing a more morally ambiguous character. And I would do a not really good thing. I attempted to rob a traveling salesman who was just trying to show his wares. And I'm like, guys, I've got to pin down and steal the stuff. So what actually happened there is I said, I'm going to make a grapple attack against the trader. Can I make a grapple attack against this tradesman? Before the DM could respond, one of the other players said, "No, you do not. I put myself between your character and this traitor." That sucked. If I'm not going to be able to do it, it's up to the DM to say. Now, I'll be honest, there is criticism to be leveled at that DM for not going, okay, let's resolve how those actions play out. And I know that at my table, I would say, okay, this person said they were going to do the grapple first. First of all, you can make a perception check to see if you notice this in time. Set a relatively low DC for that one. Yeah, okay, you rolled a 12. That's enough to notice that this is happening. Now you're going to need to make an athletics check to get in the way, and then I'm going to need you to make a grapple attack against this other player character. And by the way, there's an interesting little tidbit at the end there. Of course, that's making a contested roll against another player. You've got to make sure that your table is okay with that, which mine is in certain situations. The DM I was playing with at the time didn't do any of that, and kind of didn't really know what to do at all. And then this other player just kind of railroaded the situation, and actually I didn't get to do the thing that my character wanted to do at all. I never did. That player constantly stopped it, because they were playing a morally good character. They would not stand for anything remotely evil. That's one of those things you're going to have to address. Remember, lawful stupid is just as bad as chaotic neutral. And even then, chaotic neutral isn't the problem. It's chaotic stupid that is. Again, there is no such thing as a problem character, only problem players. Let's get back to the point a little bit here. So when I say the social contract has to be a bit unique, what does that mean? Okay, I think one of the first things is players have to be willing to let things play out. I think it is very easy for us to knee-jerk as people, as players, when someone does something in-game that is usually not okay. Here's an example from my table. This happened a little bit earlier on. This is when all the players didn't really trust each other a lot. Two were going to head off to the side to chat about something, and one of the other players was a little bit suspicious as to what they were chatting about and wanted to eavesdrop. So he turned himself invisible and went up to eavesdrop on other players. At a lot of tables, this would not be acceptable. And the moment they say that, the moment someone says, "I'm going to turn invisible and eavesdrop on the conversation," players at the table go, "Whoa, whoa," like throw up their hands, like, "Come on, no, you can't do that, DM, like, that's really shitty, we're trying to have a private conversation," right? A lot of players aren't even willing to let it happen in the first place. That's something that you as a player need to get over if you want to be able to play in that sort of game. You as the DM need to be able to have that discussion. You need to be able to go to the players and say, we can't have knee-jerk reactions when someone wants to do something inherently evil. We need to let it play out because we are playing an evil campaign. If you want your character to be able to do those same sorts of things when it suits you, you've got to let that character do it when it suits them. It means that sometimes two players are going to want things that are completely at odds with one another. Let it play out in character. That is the biggest piece of advice I think I could give any DM anywhere ever. Let those sorts of things play out in character. Do not ever let it become a player conflict at the table. Let it become a character conflict in the game. And this is how this particular situation played out. This character that was stealthing, it's a goblin, actually, for what it's worth. They were invisible. They were following these other two characters to their room at this inn. He had to make stealth checks to move quietly across the wooden floor. The other characters could roll to perceive it. One of them did perceive a noise, only just slightly, and I said as much. You know, they passed the perception check. I said, "You think you might have heard a bit of a noise back out in the hallway?" And they go, "I'm going to go out and have a look." Okay, you take a look. You don't see anything. And the other player sort of went, "I'm going to stop moving here." "Okay, sure." And the other one went, "I'm going to move towards where I think I heard the sound." This would have put them directly in the path of the goblin. They would have bumped into each other. So the goblin went, "I'm going to try and move out of the way." Okay, roll an acrobatics check, I think I did it as. And also a stealth check, because you are trying to move out of the way quickly and silently. You're trying to press yourself up against the wall such that this person does not even bump you at all. They had to pass both of those checks. And they did. So they got to eavesdrop. And if they'd failed them, well, it would have played out. It would have played out in character. The paladin would have bumped into them and gone, what the hell? And, I don't know, maybe tried to grab the thing, and maybe the goblin would have tried to get away, and maybe the goblin would have failed. And then suddenly they're having this conversation of like, why were you trying to eavesdrop on us? We need to trust each other. Or maybe the goblin got away, and they're like, I know something was here. I know someone tried to eavesdrop on us. I don't know if it was a party member or someone else, but something's up, right? These things would have all played out. These create interesting long-term situations. Now, here's what did happen in our current game, in the actual campaign. The goblin successfully eavesdropped. They learned a piece of information. They later let this piece of information go to someone else, who knew that the only way the goblin could know that piece of information is if they had eavesdropped. This is now about 7 sessions down the line from when this incident happened, when the goblin learned the information, and suddenly there was this, I trust you now, I understand you didn't trust me then, but you can't ever do that again. That can't happen. And the goblin going, yes, I know. That being said, let's address this because this information is pertinent. I apologize for the means through which I knew it, but at the same time, this was the time to divulge it, and you chose not to. And the players had to hash it out in character. And at the end of it, their characters trusted each other more. Not less, more. Because you've gone through something together. You've resolved a conflict rather than letting it simmer, rather than the players getting frustrated at the game. I think that's a tacit agreement that all players must have when you are running a quote-unquote evil campaign. Everyone must be willing to let these sorts of behaviors play out at the table, because otherwise you're actually never going to get to do any of this stuff. There's no point making someone who is willing to murder if no one ever gets the opportunity to murder. And if you have said from the outset, this is the kind of game it is, this is the time to play a cheat or a murderer or a thief, if you don't facilitate that, you're failing as a DM. And part of facilitating that is having those discussions with the players. So that is, I think, the most important part of running those sorts of campaigns. I think there is a significant amount of it that is the social contract at the table. It's different. Now, here's the other thing as well. There is a very important step that comes at character creation for these sorts of campaigns. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, again, this is, this character creation, this is where we learn if the players are going to be cheats and yada, yada, yada. Now, not all of my players are completely evil. Some of them unequivocally are. Some are just neutral. They've stolen out of necessity in the past because they have no money. Whereas some are like, yeah, I murder. Like, I'm totally okay with doing that. Don't really care either way. If I've got a job that says murder this guy, I'll do it. No worries. Not like, oh, I don't really like it, but I kind of have no choice. And it weighs on me a bit heavily, but I do it. And then there are some players that are like, no, killing is wrong. Well, characters, I should say. Some characters that go, no, killing is wrong. We shouldn't do this. So when those players made their characters, I sat down and went, how would this character react in a party that does do these things? And we talked about that. Now, here's the thing. If the character is going to have a huge issue with it, like if it is literally unreconcilable, maybe not the right character. Maybe talk to the player about rolling up something different, or maybe saying, look, you do understand this is the sort of campaign that's being run here. A lot of the other players do have more morally ambiguous characters. This character is probably going to need to be okay with that. How do we want to make that work? And even if the player just goes, I guess my character can put up with it if they're looking the other way. Awesome. Problem solved. But you need to have that conversation. You cannot have that player come to the table and suddenly find that the campaign is rife with things that character will not stand for. Because then they're in a situation where they're like, I really want to play this character, but I maybe can't in this campaign. Man, I wish I'd known that before I wasted all that time. I'm excited to play this character. Maybe I'm going to be less excited to play my next one. When do I get to play this character? Come on. Work with your players, right? Have that conversation in advance. And also have it with the evil players. Why do they do these things? Why are they willing to murder, cheat? What would make them change their ways? Is there anything that could make them change their ways? Get detailed. because it's also going to help them know their character better. It's going to make for a far more in-depth experience at the table, in my honest opinion. And I think those two pieces together are the foundation for a good evil campaign. Talk to your players at character creation, have them understand what an evil campaign entails, make them be clear on how their characters will feel about the sort of evil situations that are likely to occur. Then also talk with all of your players, and do this in a group setting as well. Don't do this part one-on-one in the character creation. Do this with everyone at the table. This is a session zero kind of thing to do. Talk about the social contract that needs to exist in an evil campaign. Talk about being willing to let things play out. You got a rogue that habitually steals from the whole party? Let it happen. Don't go, hey, that's bullshit, stop doing that. Let it happen. And then have your character organically realize that, some of my stuff is missing. I'm going to start investigating that. The investigation leads them to the rogue. Hey, arsehole, you've been stealing from us. What gives? You know, we've got to trust each other. You can steal from anyone else, don't steal from us. For those of you who watch Critical Role, a lot of this actually happened, especially in the opening sessions of the second campaign, the one that is currently running. A lot of these characters were slimy bastards. Not the greatest of people. There were inter-party conflicts. People drew swords at one another at times. People stole from one another. People lied to one another. And now, I think they're, what, 30 sessions deep, something like that? I saw in the past. They are far stronger for it. They are very, very bonded together. And a lot of it's because those things happened and they went, look, we've got to trust each other. Okay? Things get dangerous. We need to be on each other's side. You know, you may not like having to not steal from me, but I'm sure you appreciate not dying when I heal you, for example. Let those things play out at your table as well. It's very important that you do so. And the next time someone comes to you with, you know, a loner drow ranger, don't just roll your eyes. Talk to them about it. Make sure you're clear on what the character is. A good player can play any character. A good player can play a sticky-fingered rogue that grabs anything and everything that's shiny. Or a half-orc that is always willing to fight no matter the situation and constantly gets in trouble for it. Or a tiefling that is a cheat and a thief. It is not the player. It is not the player that decides. They edited that out. That was completely wrong. It is not the character. It is the player if there is a problem. There is no such thing as a problem character, only a problem player. There is plenty of resources out there on dealing with problem players. I'm more than happy to give my advice on that situation as well. But let players play characters. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.